Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Switched On. So we're back a little faster than usual this time because there was just a ton of really interesting Nintendo news recently, so we didn't really want to wait 2 weeks to break it all down. I'm your host, Ben Lamoureux, and I'm joined by two of our regulars on the show. Welcome back, Will.
How's it going, dudes?
It's going well, and welcome back, Jeff.
May your souls be rich, your minds be sharp, and your bodies forever ready.
So, did you steal that from somewhere, or did you, spend a long time writing that?
Actually, I just thought about that coming up the stairs.
Wow. Natural poet.
Aw,
Natural
thank you.
poet
Well
Jeff
done.
right here. So, like I said, we've actually got some pretty major stories to discuss later, including the retirement of a longtime Nintendo president and reports of a Nintendo/Microsoft partnership. But first, we're going to dive into some of the smaller stories of the week, including a bunch of juicy rumors. You guys ready?
Oh, I'm all set.
All right, let's dig in. So our first rumor to evaluate is there's been a bunch of rumblings about Nintendo reviving an officially canceled game. So we heard this first from Ermin Khan from Game Informer. He appeared on the Kind of Funny podcast and talked a little bit about it. So what do you guys think? What do you think Nintendo might be working on?
It's a Scalebound? It's a Scalebound? It's Scalebound! Is it Scalebound? I think it's Scalebound.
Jeff,
No,
you are
not at all.
representative of all of the internet right now.
Nah. When it comes to what this officially canceled game might be, really, it could be anything. I mean, it might be a game that we might have heard about. It might have been something that probably only existed behind closed doors. So, if anything, I've just kept myself mum and just retained more of a wait-and-see approach.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly, yeah, the only other thing I could think of would be Mother 3, as the cliche goes, but as we discussed last time, that's probably not as likely.
Yeah, and that wasn't so much cancels as it was just localization plans were canceled.
Right.
So, I absolutely don't think it's Scalebound. I said that at the time, and then, since then, Liam Robertson, who you might know, he used to release videos for Unseen64. Now he has his own channel, and he also works with Did You Know Gaming quite a bit. So he was the one who first announced that Scalebound was canceled in the first place, before that was public news. And then I think later that day, just a few hours later, Microsoft and Platinum put out press releases confirming it. So he doesn't think it's Scalebound either. He's talked to a lot of people that were working on Scalebound or used to work at Platinum Games, and none of them seem to think it's Scalebound. And that also goes for J.P. Kellums, who was the creative director or creative producer on Scalebound. So he also no longer works at Platinum. So, it's possible that plans happened after he left, but it really doesn't seem like it from everybody close to the project. And there's a lot of reasons for that, too. Microsoft, as far as we know, still owns the IP, and the game apparently was struggling to run on Xbox One. So if they were going to revive it for Switch, they'd probably have to just completely start over from the ground up. And this is a game where they tried to build it on Wii and then canceled it, and then there was talk of maybe Wii U, and then they moved it to Xbox. So this is a project that I think is probably dead for good. But even if it's not, I don't think it's not the game that Nintendo's reviving right now. Platinum they're busy with Astral Chain, they're busy with Bayonetta, they have that Babylon Fall game, they're making a bunch of mobile titles. So I think the studio is stretched way too thin to be making another Switch exclusive right now.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
One thing that does come to mind, I know Panic Button, I think the dev was, that managed to port Wolfenstein 2 and Warframe to Switch. Sure. They definitely had pretty good success with that. I mean, obviously neither is the definitive edition, but the fact that it runs competently at all on the Switch was absolutely a testament. This, however, does seem like an even bigger uphill battle than that, so yeah, I wouldn't hold my breath.
Yeah, for sure. If I had to take a sort of shot in the dark about what this canceled game is, Mega Man Legends is the first thing that comes to mind. Mega Man Legends 3. Because that that was already going to be a Nintendo exclusive. It was planned for 3DS, and it was far enough along in development that there was actually a playable demo in Japan. Everyone could go just download it off the eShop.
Wasn't there also a fan art contest for the game, and people just kept on submitting, and maybe their chosen design would have appeared in the final product? I
think there was something like that. I'm not sure how extensive it was, but yeah, I believe there was some fan content contributed towards it. So it's very popular. It's got this a fairly niche group of fans, but very, very vocal fans. And a big part of why it was canceled is because Capcom was basically running into some budgetary issues, and they figured, like, this isn't going to sell enough copies to justify, finishing up development on 3DS. But Switch is selling like hotcakes, and, every day we're hearing, new stories about, like Zelda's setting sale records, Mario's setting sale records, all these indie games are setting sale records, all of these third-party ports are setting sale records, Dragon Ball's setting sale records. So, if I was Capcom, I'd be looking at this real hard and going, maybe it's time to give that old Mega Man Legends 3 another try.
Yeah, given that I still haven't played Legends 2, I would kill for a Legends Legacy collection on Switch.
Yeah, for sure. That'd make a great bundle.
And as for Scalebound, I do agree that in its current state, it is dead in the water. There's absolutely no way it'll ever come back. But given from what I read, that Scalebound was kind of Hideki Kamiya's dream project, I wouldn't be surprised if they do manage to rework it under a different name, different identity, but still keep some of the core elements, essentially just a human and a dragon partner just going around wrecking stuff. I'd like to play that on the Switch. It would be fun.
Yeah, I'm sure in a dream scenario, Kamiya gets to make this game eventually, but I just don't think the time is right.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you said, they've got a ton of mobile games in the works, as well as Astral Chain, which thankfully does look to be wrapping up development within the next few months. Then Bayonetta 3, whenever that is, and possibly a Wonderful 101 port, given that they did tease that last year, and they have discussed the idea with Nintendo at least at some length, but then again, there's no real confirmation of that coming, and even then, that's just another. It's just another project added on top of their list of growing projects. So yeah, Scalebound. If ever there's a Scalebound revival, it's not going to be for several years at best.
Yeah, they're not even that big of a studio, but they're pretty ambitious for their size.
Very.
So shifting gears to one of the strangest stories of the week, the United States Environmental Protection Agency stole some music from a Yoshi game. So basically the EPA set up this site. I think people that have dug through the code have found out that it was up since 2017 and just no one noticed it. But it's just a point-and-click game that's supposed to educate kids about why you should recycle and what the best ways are to save energy and get your electric bill down, that sort of thing. But the whole time you're playing this little point-and-click adventure, the underground theme from Yoshi's Island DS is playing in the background.
Honestly, I don't want to get too political on the show, but given the government in power right now, I wouldn't be surprised that its Environmental Protection Agency website hardly gets any traction.
Yeah. I can't imagine it's exactly the most popular website.
I will say the story was an interesting change of pace from the various PETA parody games we've seen.
Oh, that is true.
Of Mario and Pokemon.
Yeah, every few years, when PETA wants to get relevant again, they have to make some parody game about how Nintendo murders animals or something. So, yeah.
Oh, by the way,
sure
PETA.
The next one will star Steve Irwin.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, PETA. Are you still killing the dogs and cats that you just take in just at random? 80% minimum? Did you work on that? What? No, sucks.
I'm going to go ahead and guess now. So, as you can imagine, people made kind of a big stink about this on the internet, mostly because it's hilarious. And the EPA responded by saying, we'll look into it. They said a contractor made the game for them, and they weren't sure if the contractor got permission or not. And then shortly after saying that, the music disappeared from the site. So I think we have our answer.
Yeah, at least it wrapped itself up pretty nicely.
Yeah, I don't think Nintendo's gonna try to sue the EPA or anything, so this is probably the end of the story.
Yeah, and I gotta say though, I'm very surprised that we made it to the end of all this without making one tax evasion joke.
Well, there it is.
How can you not point it out?
I did find it interesting that they went with Yoshi's Island DS of all games. I never thought I would hear about that one again.
Yeah.
I remember playing a little bit of it when it came out. My sister got it for Christmas, and it was fine, but I don't know, it didn't set itself a whole lot apart from the original for me, so...
Well, it did to the EPA.
Exactly.
Alright, so next up we have a whole bunch of just random Pokemon news and rumors. The first story is that the new Pokemon Go Snapshot feature is out on Android. I guess I'm seeing a note here added by one of you lovely gentlemen. Apparently it's out on iOS now, too.
Yeah, yep. And you can also get Smeargle by taking photos.
Dope.
Very. I've been taking a lot of pictures tonight, just trying to get them to spawn. It took, like you guys saw, just coming into the chat there. I just took one of my Plusle, just inching closer to my lasagna, and then I put up that Rhyperior one on Twitter that I shouldn't be proud of, but I am.
I mean, I got a laugh out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but this is a family podcast, so...
Yeah, so this just, it lets you take pictures of any Pokemon that you've captured, so it makes it a lot easier than the old method where you had to, actually take pictures of them in the wild, so...
Yeah, this was something that I've kind of been hoping for since day one, because, it's never, quite the Pokemon you want. They can always just, run away.
Yeah, it just wasn't very convenient before.
Exactly.
So next up, Niantic has also announced that you'll soon be able to switch teams in Pokemon Go, but there are some strings attached. You can only do that once per year, and that's a 365-day reset time. So if you change your team on June 21st, you can't change your team again until June 21st of the next year. And then the other string attached is that you have to buy an item to do this, and it costs a little bit less than the equivalent of $10 in the real world, which is a bit of a hefty price tag, but I guess, that's the cost of being a trader.
Mm-hmm. Team Valor? Team Instinct? Team Mystic? You want to switch? By all means, my friend, as long as you've got enough rupees.
Oh boy. That was... I mean, it's a good thing that I have no intention of changing teams anytime soon, but also, man, just the industry is really just becoming a parody of itself with news like that.
Mm-hmm. Someone get Jen Sterling on the line.
Pokemon Go is it's not too bad in terms of gacha monetization, but this right here is definitely a bit of an eye raiser for me.
Yeah, I don't want to be too on my high horse because I have spent a few bucks here and there on Pokeballs in the past, so not shaming anyone for the basics of that in particular, but that is just, come on.
And for me as well, I'm happy with the team that I picked from the very first day. Team Valor, all the way.
Mystic Master Race.
I'm also Mystic.
Woo!
So, going forward, Niantic says they also want to add more augmented reality elements in Pokemon Go. They feel that at this point, they've basically delivered on the promises that they made in the initial launch trailer of, go out and catch Pokemon in the real world, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And so now they want to focus on how can we really push the fact that this is not just a Pokemon game, but an augmented reality game.
Yeah, it's like you said, there's really not much else that they can do except just keep on adding more Pokemon as time goes on, move on to other generations, so I'm honestly not sure what else they can bring to the table, augmented reality-wise. I'd be surprised for just about anything at this point.
That is a good question. So, to say that I'm a lapsed Pokemon Go player would honestly be pretty generous at this point, but I know that a lot of us probably did switch off the AR for Pokemon catching eventually to save on battery and data and all that. Mm-hmm. So, with that said, I do like the idea of them finding other ways to reincorporate AR back into the game, like the new photo mode. I haven't been using it at all, but it's definitely super cute whenever I do see it, and I guess we'll see.
Yeah, they didn't really give any specific hints, so I'm not sure what to expect. I'm also a bit of a lapsed player because I use Pokemon Go mainly as an exercise tool, right? So it's a good excuse to go out and go for a 3-hour walk at night and burn some calories, help me wind down. But I live in the Midwest, so the past 2 months the weather has been alternating between 30 below zero, 30-mile-hour winds, snow, and freezing rain. So I have not been outside all that much, which means I have not been playing Pokemon Go much.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
I'm in a similar boat here in Kansas. Fun times.
Ottawa, Canada. It is the worst.
So that's all we have for really, confirmed Pokemon news. But there's been about 1 million rumors going around recently, which is to be expected because we're just, at the time of recording, we're a day or two away from the anniversary of Pokemon. So the games launched, the original games launched on February 27th in Japan. But due to time zone differences, that's, going to overlap with quite a bit of February 26th here in the U.S. So there's been a lot of rumbling that maybe we'll get a Pokemon Direct on the 26th. Maybe we'll get news about Gen 8 or whatever the upcoming games are for Switch. But nothing particularly solid. There was one person who appeared to have leaked a lot of details from the Nintendo Direct, and he said we're getting Pokemon news soon. But it's one of those things where you have to be cautious because most of the things leaked were vague enough that they could have been guesses. So there's a lot of people speculating that essentially he threw out a lot of guesses and then deleted the ones that were wrong as soon as the Direct wrapped up, because it was a relatively lesser-known Twitter account that posted these rumors. And then since then, there's been about 20 other rumors, and, all of about equal or less validity, where it's like, yeah, we can't really... Either we know this is wrong, or we can't confirm that this person has a track record. It's really hard to say. But basically, the Pokemon fan base is losing its mind right now, speculating.
Yeah, it will be interesting. It will be interesting once word actually drops on the Switch games. I mean, at the very least, tomorrow we know that we're getting a new trailer for the Detective Pikachu movie. But beyond that, I mean, I would love to see more information on Pokemon. I don't know. I was about to say just Sun and Moon as a random pull out of a hat kind of thing, but no, we've already got Sun and Moon. I mean, I did see King and Queen pop up quite a bit. So who knows?
Yeah, that's one of the rumors going around. The King and Queen name has been rumored for a long time. There was the source of all things good here, a 4chan leak back on January 1st saying it was going to be King and Queen, and that it would contain 2 regions roughly based on London and the surrounding area, and then Egypt. And depending on which version you get, you'll either start in the Egypt region or start in the London region, and then kind of get a different story perspective because of that. So people went nuts after Junichi Masuda, one of the main directors and producers of Pokemon. He tweeted out just a random Pokemon Go screenshot of catching a Weedle, and people were going nuts because the height and weight of the Weedle corresponded to Pokédex entries for Vespiquen and Nidoking. So a lot of people were like, "Oh, King and Queen confirmed," but
let's take a look at
a little bit
more
of a stretch.
clues.
Yeah, so I'm not quite sure what to think. And then, every year there's always the rumor that, the next Pokemon game is going to include all past regions. So that one's been circulating as well. And yeah, I definitely don't buy that.
I mean, if anything, I'm absolutely sure that... I mean, I'm calling it now, putting money on the table, that the Pokemon game that will be revealed for Nintendo Switch is going to be Pokemon Z and Pokemon Star.
Yeah.
You heard it from here first, folks. I got an uncle who works at Nintendo.
Yeah, I'm still not sure what to make of the whole Stars thing, because there were, a lot of pretty reputable people who thought that it existed. Yeah, so I don't know if it existed and it was canceled, or if that was just a bad source that a lot of people picked up on, but there's definitely a lot of people thinking Switch was getting a new iteration of Sun and Moon. But instead, we did not get that. We got the Let's Go games, and now we're going to have whatever Gen 8 is, and obviously we got Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon on 3DS, so...
It's totally going to be Let's Go Badoo.
The Gen 4 remakes you've been waiting for.
I do think we'll get Let's Go games for Johto eventually, but not, immediately. It's not going to be that quick of a turnaround. So, but I think, Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee sold well enough that this will become its own spin-off series. Now the question is, do they go to Johto next, or do we go to, Gen 4, because that's never been remade before?
I want a traditional Gen 4 remake, honestly.
I want both. I've wanted a Gen 4 remake for a long time, but the Gen 2 Johto / Kanto is just it's my favorite. But then again, we've already had Heart Gold, Soul Silver there, so I don't know if we need the double dip. But we already got that, on Gen 1. So
yeah, I mean we did already get Fire Red and Leaf Green, so
Exactly.
They'll never be tired of remaking Kanto. Kanto is the only constant. I see Kanto when I sleep. I see Kanto when I eat. When I go to sleep,
So yeah,
I count Kanto.
At this point, no, you count Mareep. At this point, I'm not inclined to believe any of the Pokemon rumors. I wouldn't be surprised if we get a teaser for Pokemon Day, and by the time we publish this this podcast, Pokemon Day probably will have come and passed. We're recording this on the night of the 25th, so the Pokemon Day celebrations will be across the 26th and 27th. So this will be old news by the time it airs. So hopefully I'm wrong. Hopefully we get a Gen 8 reveal and it's glorious, and you guys are listening to this going, these guys are stupid. But I'm not expecting a reveal in the next couple of days. All right, so moving on. We just have a few miscellaneous stories left over before we get to the big topics. So let's go ahead and dive into those. The first one is that we think Link's Awakening might have some sort of multiplayer element. Basically, if you just go to Nintendo's official website for the game right now and scroll down to the bottom where it gives, the data on, ages and players and whatnot, it's listed as undecided or to be determined when it comes to the number of players, rather than just saying it's a single-player game.
So I think the first thing that came to mind there for me was, I know Phantom Hourglass and Spirit Tracks on the DS had an interesting sort of PvP multiplayer per game. And then I know a lot of people talk Four Swords. I'm not sure how likely that is, but then again, the original Four Swords was very much kind of a smaller add-on to Link to the Past for Game Boy Advance, so who knows. One thought I did have earlier today was maybe they could take a page from a game like Super Mario Galaxy or Kirby and the Rainbow Curse and do sort of an assist co-op sort of thing where player 2 takes more of kind of a backseat role and can kind of just assist player 1 in little odds and ends, which would be kind of a nice family appeal, given that it has such a kind of cutesy art vibe to it.
Yeah, I mean, kind of like how in the Let's Go games you can shake a Joy-Con, and then the idea is that a parent can jump in and help their young kid who might be playing for the first time.
That too, yeah. I accidentally activated that solo a couple times while I was just trying to navigate back to the home menu with my Joy-Con. Apparently that is really hard to deactivate, or at least it was for me in the moment.
Yeah, I think you can just shake to send it away again, but it's not super apparent. So the first time I did it, I was pressing all kinds of buttons, how do I make the second person go away? Because they'll just follow you. If you walk on screen, they'll despawn and then respawn next to you.
And
Slenderman.
As for what I think about the whole possibility of multiplayer, I don't know. I thought that maybe they just didn't bother updating it. It was just a placeholder. But on the off chance that it does have multiplayer, I do think like you guys said, it would be sort of an opt-in, opt-out feature for a player 2 to just hop in and assist. I mean, sure. I mean, Link's Awakening was traditionally a single-player game on Game Boy and Game Boy Color, but then I think a little bit more on the setting of the game being, spoiler alert to those of you who haven't read about the game since 1993, that seeing as the whole place sort of takes place in a dream, what if player 2 was some kind of dreamy Link,
Mm-hmm. Are you saying Link's not normally dreamy? Because,
Hey.
I mean,
Link's a hunk.
I mean, I'm completely secure, but I do appreciate a fine specimen from time to time.
Hey, Reggie's on record. Link is hot, guys.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, so I don't see this as being a Four Swords type situation where you're meant to play the whole game multiplayer, but like Will said, it could be some kind of just versus mode, or maybe they'll have an extra dungeon or something. In the Game Boy Color version, we got the Color Palace, but it doesn't really make all that much sense to have a dungeon just revolving around color, seeing as we've had color in the games for decades now, whereas that was kind of a big deal on Game Boy Color. So maybe something that makes a little more use of Switch's unique features could be used in a unique dungeon. So maybe there'll be a multiplayer based dungeon for just optional completion after you beat the game? Hard to say. And, like you said, Jeff, it's entirely possible that this is just like someone typed in a lazy placeholder thing and never bothered to change it. But obviously we're going to speculate until it says single player. So
We are Nintendo fans. It is what we do.
Pokemon King and Queen is real, guys. So
right.
moving on to not exactly a rumor, but something else sort of unconfirmed. Smash data miners believe they found what the next Smash Bros. Stage is going to be. So again, possible mild spoilers for the next couple minutes here. But basically they've dug through the code and they found the word mementos next to the word Jack. And as you know, Jack is sort of the internal code name for Joker, or at least that's what data miners believe. So it's believed that this is going to be the Memento stage from Persona 5.
I have absolutely no idea as to what that place is like, but I hope to find out if a Persona 5 port for Switch does get announced next month. We are expecting news from Atlas on possible like Persona 5, I don't know, like maybe like a revival or like a remake or just like an enhanced version of the original. And given Joker's impending arrival, I mean, there's no way that game isn't coming to Switch at this point. I mean, Atlas, they've yet to make a big splash on the console. We know Shin Megami Tensei 5 is coming, but that's a very, very long ways away, considering they've only just started full-scale development last year. And Persona 5, sure, they could easily port that onto the system, and just plugging a little something I'm writing, I would not be surprised if Tokyo Mirage Sessions does come, but right now, Persona 5, yes, hope to learn more, hope to know more about Mementos, because all I've got right now is just playing the game whenever I'm free with a friend on her PS4. And I've just beaten the Kamoshida dungeon, and I can't wait to see him fall.
I believe they're also planning some sort of Persona-related convention or press conference sometime in April.
Ooh.
And we know that Joker is coming to Smash before the end of April. So, yeah, it would make a whole lot of sense to announce the port then.
Mm-hmm.
So last week I knew nothing about Persona, and I still don't, let alone most of Atlas's works. So, yeah, not much to add here, but I do already have the Fighter Pass. It's Smash. I'm sure I'll enjoy whatever they have to offer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I'm not super familiar with Persona either. I had to do just a little bit of research to write this news post up. And apparently Mementos is also known as the Prison of Sloth and the Prison of Regression. So it sounds like a pleasant place.
I mean, then again, it's Super Smash
Sloths
Brothers.
are adorable.
I mean, we come into Smash Bros. playing through franchises that we know and those that we don't. I only got into Fire Emblem and Xenoblade and what other games? I mean, I'd like to get into Castlevania, but again, it's all because I was introduced to these franchises through Smash. Persona is just the latest in a long line of introductions to these series.
Yeah, Smash is absolutely great for that.
Yeah, the same could be said for a lot of us that were on the younger side when Smash Bros. 64 came out. Thanks to Nintendo Power, I was pretty much one of the only first graders who knew that Samus was a woman. More spoilers. and Captain Falcon felt very out of left field, because I don't think I didn't own an SNES at the time, so I don't think I had even heard of F-Zero prior to Smash.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people who probably wouldn't have heard of the Earthbound/Mother franchise had it not been for Smash Bros. 2.
What's an F-Zero? Is that coming to Switch?
Probably not.
Speaking of coming to Switch...
Yeah, speaking of coming to Switch, Resident Evil. So we heard last year that Resident Evil 0, 1, and 4 would all be coming to Switch. And then earlier in the week, Capcom teased that we'd have news coming soon. And today, again, that's the 25th is when we're recording, they confirmed that they're all coming to Switch on May 21st. So they're all going to launch on the eShop, but in North America, you'll be able to get 0 and 1 together in a physical bundle at retail, too.
I know for sure that I am not getting these games because I am absolutely terrified of scary titles. I do not like being spooked out of my seat. It gives me the willies. It just makes me... It doesn't make me sleep well at night.
So I'll be buying Resident Evil 4 for roughly the 10 millionth time.
Exactly.
I'll probably skip out on 0 and 1 just because I'm garbage at the tank controls and fixed camera angles. But I will buy 4 on just about any platform they put it on. And they'll have the ability to bring back the Wii motion controls if they want.
Oh,
so
yeah.
that'll be nice. and also I can play it on the go.
Yeah, I mean, they were able to pull off Joy-Con motion controls for both Revelations games, so I don't see why not. But yeah, I think this news had initially broke late last year around my first Switched On appearance, and but yeah, to kind of echo that, I will definitely grab 4 again. The 0 and 1 bundle, I actually have on PS4 already, so probably not. But then again, I did totally trade in Revelations 2 for PS4 when those came to Switch, so we'll see.
And then our final story is not exactly a Nintendo story, but it could have some ramifications for Nintendo, and that is Sony is officially discontinuing the Vita. So, they stopped making new games for it a while ago, and they've set a deadline for when third parties can, submit their new games. And they stopped manufacturing it in in North America and in Europe in the past already, but now they're completely cutting it off at the head. So Japan is ending production as well. They didn't give a specific date, but when they put out a similar announcement for PS3, it was 2 months later then that production just completely came to a halt. So, long live the Vita.
F.
That's F to pay respects. So, Will, I know you had some thoughts about what this could potentially mean for the handheld market with, 3DS launching around the same time as Vita. It's a similar age.
Mm-hmm. So, I am by no means enough of an industry expert to definitively say 3DS will die this year, but it does occur to me that there was no mention whatsoever of 3DS in the most recent Nintendo Direct, for one thing. Mm-hmm. So clearly they're kind of slowing down on at least first-party content, it seems. And then another lesser news story that's kind of been sitting in my head for the past couple weeks. You might want to sit down for this one, Jeff.
Oh.
So, Nintendo Life and a couple of other sites reported that Mario & Luigi Bowser's Inside Story, the 3DS remake, is one of the worst-selling Mario games to date.
No! Not Bowser's Inside Story!
I really liked that. Yeah, I really liked that one on the original DS, so that's kind of a bummer.
That game is a treasure. It's an international treasure, Will. How do 3DS owners not recognize it?
But yeah, I mean, given that it's come out like so late in the 3DS's lifespan, and I guess it wasn't really as hyped up as the Superstar Saga remake either. So that's just one example, but yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of game sales are on the decline for 3DS. Like, we saw a handful of simultaneous 3DS and Switch launch ports, such as Captain Toad and Sushi Striker, but we haven't seen as much of that I'm aware of more recently. So I figure definitely by next year, but we'll see.
So for the past year plus, Nintendo has stopped really making new games. It's just been, ports and remakes. And whenever they talk about it in investor meetings, whenever they're asked, how do you balance both the Switch and 3DS markets? How do you keep them from, eating into each other? They say the reason 3DS sells is because it's so cheap. A lot of people buy it for their kids as their first ever console because it's like, oh, hey, I can, get this thing for like $100. There's a bunch of cheap games on it. It's got this huge library. It's backwards compatible. Mm-hmm. But those sales have dried up. They said in their most recent investor meeting that, the big headline was Switch undersold expectations, right? They wanted to get to 20 million. Now they're saying only 17 million.
Which is still a lot.
3DS also... What's that?
Which is still a lot.
Yeah, which is still a lot.
Mm-hmm.
3DS also undersold expectations. So it sold, I think, less than 3 million total units last year. And so they've said basically the market dried up faster than we expected. So, Nintendo has already scaled back their first-party support, and now I think it's going to be just about completely gone. Mm-hmm. But at this point, I doubt they're going to pull the rug out from third parties right away because it's still got an install base of like 70 million or something like that. So there's still plenty of people that own a 3DS. So there's still software money to be made, but there's really not much hardware money to be made left. I mean, there's still a market for people that want a cheaper handheld, but 3DS is no longer that handheld. It's just it's too old. The graphics I think are a little too dated, and so it's no longer flying off the shelves. So I would say 3DS is, for all intents and purposes, basically dead as well. but I don't expect Nintendo to officially kill it off for a little while longer, maybe in 2020. But I think it's safe through 2019.
Yeah, as things currently stand, the only two like big name games we know that are coming to the 3DS are our Kirby Extra Epic Yarn out next month, and then Persona Q2 from Atlas. And beyond that, we don't have anything else coming up. I mean, it's not just the end of the 3DS that's looming over our heads now. It's basically the end of traditional handheld gaming as we knew it. I mean, for the longest time, it's been like the Game Boy line and the Nintendo console line, and ever since they coalesced into the beautiful hybrid that is the Switch, there's not much point to a 3DS anymore beyond like the dual screen mechanic, and
and the cheaper price point.
And exactly, the cheaper price point. So, like, if there's ever going to be like a full on swan song for the 3DS, like how the Wii U got Breath of the Wild like as its last big release, if there's going to be like one more big splash for the 3DS, it'll probably be at E3. But either way, whether it does make an appearance or not, the end is near.
Yeah, for sure.
I would have liked to see like one final 2D Zelda on it or something that wasn't a spin-off like Triforce Heroes, since like the only non-remake or spin-off we got was Link Between Worlds. But now that they've announced a 2D Zelda for Switch, that's probably not very likely.
And
now, I agree.
The end is near, and so I face the final curtain. Nah, that's pretty much it.
Pulling a Team 4-star here. So yeah, like we've discussed in the past, I think this is probably a good time, 2019 or maybe early 2020, for Nintendo to introduce a Switch Mini, because then you fill that gap, that hole in the market where there's people that want a super cheap handheld but don't want the 3DS. So we'll see. They definitely recognize that market exists and that it's no longer being taken care of by 3DS. So your move, Nintendo. Ball's in your court. All right, so that does it for general news. Now we're up to our big discussion segment, which is sort of two-pronged here. It's actually two somewhat unrelated stories, but they both have to do with big shakeups at Nintendo that have sort of major implications for, the future of the company. So one of them is a little more on the rumor side, so we'll go ahead and start with the one that we know for sure. And that is that Reggie fils-aime, our beloved Reginator, is retiring as president of Nintendo of America, effective on April 15th.
Nothing but respect for my president.
Hashtag yes, my president.
And not only is he retiring, he's being succeeded by, of all names, to take up the mantle of Nintendo president, Bowser.
That's right. So Doug Bowser was he was hired as a vice president of sales and then promoted to executive vice president of sales and marketing. So he's been with the company for, I think, a little over 3 years, like 3.5, something like that. Heavily involved in sales, heavily involved in marketing. And now he'll be taking over the mantle for Reggie on April 15th. So yeah, I think this move caught a lot of people off guard. Reggie's only 57, so typically the retirement age isn't, till about like 65 or so. Obviously he's had a pretty successful career. He's made a lot of money, so I'm sure he can comfortably retire. And, he said he wants to spend more time with friends and family and that sort of thing. But it definitely felt like it came out of nowhere. This is a successful president stepping down when he's sort of still in his prime, while Switch is selling gangbusters.
And all I can think of is that Hard Times headline, industry surprised by video game employee who retired willingly.
So yeah, I don't know, where you go from here exactly. It's hard to replace a guy like Reggie. He was a good president, obviously, for Nintendo, and he was he knew the language of PR speak very well. But outside of that, he was the face of Nintendo of America. He made big splashes at E3. He famously had his kick and taking names quote back in 2004 when he was just vice president. And he's continued since then. They had like that skit where he hit someone with a fire flower for asking for Mother 3. We have the I feel like a purple Pikmin. Like he's just become this sort of quotable figure that I think the general public feels they can relate to. And there's not a whole lot of corporate presidents who have that public image and that love in the eye of the public.
Suppose you could say that Reggie, in the eyes of Nintendo fans, had star power?
There was one skit or direct in particular where he just abruptly fires Bill Trennan. I don't think there was ever payoff to that, though, so
well, Trennan
welcome back,
didn't get
Bill.
his job, so...
Yeah, welcome back, Bill, whenever they did quietly let you sneak in.
As for me, my favorite Reggie moments were, you did mention the Robot Chicken sketch that they did for E3 one year, but my favorite moments were when he and Iwata were just like brawling, were full on fighting just to advertise the Mii Fighters and Smash Bros. And then I think it was the following year when he, Iwata, and Miyamoto were showing off Star Fox Zero as Muppet puppets.
Yes,
I was just rewatching that the other day.
Yeah.
And it was just so adorable. It just like Iwata, he was a lovable man. Reggie, absolutely hilarious, and I just loved the whole him just doing push-ups and it's Nintendo 62, Nintendo 63, Nintendo 64. My body is ready. Reggie, you will be missed. We love you.
Yeah, I think my favorite part about the whole Doug Bowser story is people are just now noticing an old photo of his in which you see his desk with Nintendo memorabilia and Mario and Luigi are tied up on the shelf.
He already fits
to
well
his name.
into his role. And if anything, I think
he's been playing it up.
Yeah.
He gets the irony of his name, so he's been having a lot of fun with it too, which is good because like I said, you're trying to replace a guy who is both president and also face of the company. So I think it's good for Bowser to sort of get out there and interact with the community and show that he can be a fun figurehead too.
If anything, Reggie, we can all agree that he's irreplaceable, but we're not asking for a second Reggie. I'm very much looking forward to seeing how Doug Bowser steps up to the mantle. And from what I did hear, Reggie just sort of I don't know, he's sort of coaching him or just mentoring him towards his position. So, if anything, I have absolute faith in him.
Yeah, so like I said, he came on as vice president of sales and then was promoted to executive vice president of sales and marketing.
Mm-hmm.
And for those who don't know, Nintendo of America, they don't have that much power in terms of game development. Reggie's not particularly going around hiring and firing developers, and he's not walking into retro studios and telling them how to make games.
Activision.
Yeah, Nintendo of America is a lot.
Sorry,
You
I had something in my
over there,
throat.
Jeff?
I had something in my throat just stuck in there. Triple A. I'm okay. I will live.
So
I'm just now picturing Jim Sterling jumping out of your gut, alien style. Triple A!
I would go out like that if I had a choice.
if you had a choice. So yeah, Nintendo of America is a lot more focused on the public perception and the marketing side of things. They're about figuring out what games are good to bring to America and then figuring out how to market them to Americans. So that's sort of been Bowser's specialty over these last few years. So it definitely seems like he's being groomed for the position. Mm-hmm. And I have kind of mixed thoughts about this. Mm-hmm. Not in terms of my faith in Bowser, but sort of in terms of Nintendo's faith in him, maybe. Mm-hmm. So if you look at the situation, I would love to think that Reggie absolutely just stepped down voluntarily because he wants to take time with his family. But at the same time, in that last investors meeting, Furukawa kind of threw the marketing team under the bus a little bit. Ooh. He said, we feel like we haven't done a good job of conveying the value of Switch and conveying the value of the software for Switch. And that was a general statement, not referring to Nintendo of America specifically. But yeah, he mixed a statement about how, their marketing hasn't been good enough. And then, a few weeks later, the head of marketing in North America steps down. So I don't know if it's related. I hope it's a coincidence and, Reggie's just taking some well-earned time off. Mm-hmm. Because I definitely don't think he deserves to be strong-armed out of there. He's been a very good force for Nintendo in the Americas. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I have to wonder a little bit about the timing. If they weren't particularly happy with the performance in the Americas or not. But, Bowser's been the vice president. He's been the number 2 under Reggie in America, and he's the one getting promoted. So, it's hard to think that he would be getting the promotion instead of maybe like an outside hire or something if they're unhappy with branding in the Americas. I think has been pretty good.
I mean, given that we are going up towards the end of the fiscal year, and that's usually when all these big all these big company shakeups tend to happen, and especially given all the recent horror stories that we've heard. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe the weaker expectations for the Switch might have led to Reggie stepping down, but I like to think that he just retired happily because he can.
Yeah, if he was strong-armed out, I think that's a mistake because I don't think he was the one dropping the ball.
Yeah, if they're going to strong-arm anyone, it needs to be the Russia guy. I mean,
oh my God, why is he still there?
Yeah, that whole situation's pretty rough.
And if anything, they want to try and strong arm Reggie fils-aime. His body is ready, guys.
It is.
Yours are not.
It's ready for retirement.
Yeah. Oh, I'm gonna hate myself for this joke, but I thought about it on the drive home, and so I can't not make it. So while thinking about Doug Bowser, I just randomly thought to myself, maybe his vice president or his number 2 or whoever could be retired quarterback Rich Gannon.
Spelled with 2 N's, your Gannon band.
Yeah, just like NES Zelda, it's canon.
I think this lines up pretty well with my Gannon canon.
You guys better be careful. You don't want to get me starting talking about football, or I might never stop.
Yeah, that is literally all I can contribute. So there we go.
Don't worry, we won't let this kick off into a weird segue about football.
So yeah, I think, like I said, I think Switch marketing has been pretty good during the Bowser era, if we could call it that. So I don't expect there to be like this huge drop off in quality, but we're gonna miss Reggie. It's impossible not to miss Reggie. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, a few years back, Iwata passed away, and he was sort of the face of Nintendo in Japan, and he had a lot of international clout. And then Reggie was the other face in the West. So, and then also, let's see if I can get the name right. I think it's Satoru Shibata. I think was the president of Nintendo of Europe. Mm-hmm. And he was not let go, but he was relocated back to Japan, and now he's on the board of directors, so he's sort of out of the public eye. But it's kind of an end of an era where, the face of Nintendo in Japan, the face of Nintendo in Europe, and the face of Nintendo in America have all either been relocated or, are just no longer with the company. So it's going to be a new Nintendo, but hopefully the people that have been tapped to replace them can step up to the plate.
Mm-hmm. And if anything, a lot of the old guard at Nintendo, they do seem to talk a lot about having faith in the younger generation of developers taking up the mantle. So who knows? Yeah. It'll be interesting to see how this bright new era of Nintendo gaming will pan out.
I completely agree, but at the same time, can we just make Miyamoto into one of those Futurama heads?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he's already taken a smaller role. He's now I love that his official title is Creative Fellow. So he's not, as active of a director anymore. He can be a little more hands-off and be a consultant. Mm-hmm. And, he's been talking about potentially retiring for, what seems like years. Actually, it has been years. It seems like a decade. And I wouldn't be surprised if he does officially retire eventually. Well, obviously eventually, but, within the next, midterm future. But keep in mind, Nintendo has those theme parks, which he's heavily involved in, and they have the Mario movie, which he's heavily involved in. And the Mario movie is targeting a 2022 launch, and he is said to be more hands-on with that than any video game director has ever been with an adaptation. So I think we can say for sure that he's probably safe to still have at least a consulting role with Nintendo through 2022. After that, hard to say. But at the same time, he's been in this consulting role for years, and under past President Kimishima, like you said, they've been trying to get more and more young people involved in leadership roles. They use the phrase future-proof a lot. And Furukawa, the current president, he seems to be continuing that philosophy. He's much younger than Kimishima was, and he's continued working with a lot of younger developers and so on and so forth. So hopefully Miyamoto is giving the company the send-off it needs by, expanding them into the world of theme parks and getting them back into the world of movies, hopefully better this time. And and then he can, pass the mantle on to the younger generation and hopefully leave Nintendo in a really great place to succeed going forward.
So I guess you never trusted the fungus.
I did not.
I did forget about his film involvement until you mentioned that. That did remind me. Wasn't it Miyamoto who directed those Pikmin shorts that released on the consoles a while back? I still haven't watched those, but I did hear good things about them. So that could be a little ray of hope for their film attempts going forward.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So speaking of a bright new Nintendo era.
Indeed! Mm-hmm. Look at you with the segue. So, aside from the sort of corporate staff shakeup, Nintendo might also have some other big moves coming soon. We've been hearing a lot of rumblings recently over the past few months about some sort of partnership between Nintendo and Microsoft, and then over the past week there's been some big developments in that story. So, I think we talked about this on an older podcast, but Game Developer Conference is coming up in March. And, the official website's up, and you can kind of browse it and look at panels and guest speakers and so on and so forth. And there was a panel that the description of it basically said somebody's going to be giving a speech about Xbox Live coming to Nintendo Switch. And then after that news broke, the page was taken down, or I think just the description was removed, but the page is still there. So it kind of seems like someone jumped the gun on a sort of Xbox Live app for Switch announcement. And since then, we've gotten a lot more details on it. So from a bunch of different sources, Direct Feed Games, Game Informer, and then Joe Video, which is from it's an outlet in France.
Joe Video.
They're Joe Video.
Joe Video.
Joe Video. Hey, I'm the French one here. All right, I get to decide how it's pronounced. I have a silent X in my name.
All right, je te laisse faire. C'est tout à toi, mon ami.
Oui, baguette.
Bon effort. Bon effort.
They're all reporting that Xbox Game Pass is coming to Switch, as well as support for Project xCloud. Basically, if you're not familiar, Xbox Game Pass is kind of like a Netflix for games type deal. You pay a monthly fee, and then you get a bunch of games on Xbox. And Project xCloud is sort of off console processing. So the idea is that next generation, yes, you can go out and buy a physical Xbox if you want, but you don't necessarily have to, because all first-party Xbox games will also be playable on phones and tablets. And how it'll work is basically, most of the processing is done on an Xbox server somewhere, and then your, whatever device of choice you want only has to do a small bit of the workload. And they claim they've gotten it to the point where there's no delay, no latency, you don't have to worry about lag and that sort of thing. So if these rumors are true, Game Pass and xCloud will both be supported on Switch going forward.
So what I'm really hearing is, psych, Scalebound confirmed.
Scalebound? Did you say Scalebound? I think he said Scalebound.
Well, Scalebound not confirmed, but some of the games that we've heard are coming over. Just in addition to the Game Pass library, we've heard that we're actually getting ports of Ori and the Blind Forest and Cuphead, and supposedly there's even talks about porting over potentially Halo games or Forza games, some of the bigger Xbox exclusives.
That's going to be wild. If all of this is true, I mean, I always grew up with a Microsoft and Nintendo system in my house, and I don't know, this is kind of like a match made in video game heaven for me, honestly.
Yeah.
I mean, sure, we're talking about being able to stream games off the Xbox Game Pass, should that actually come to Switch, but the fact that they might actually be porting some of their own in-house titles, like you said, Cuphead, Ori, and then maybe Forza or Halo. I think it sort of lives up to this one philosophy that I think I'm not sure if it was Phil Spencer or another Xbox head, but essentially going forward, they want Xbox to be not so much as a physical, but more like just a platform of games that you can just play off of anything. So their approach.
The idea is get as many people as possible into the Xbox ecosystem. And it doesn't matter necessarily what hardware you buy to do it, because software makes more money than hardware. Mm-hmm. A lot of times consoles actually sell for a loss for their first couple of years.
That's true.
So this is actually, to me, I've seen this, not this in particular, but I've seen this sort of general mindset for Microsoft over the past few years. Basically, there's been this huge paradigm shift. If you remember, when Xbox One launched, the whole reason they called it One is because they were going all in on the hardware. The idea was you just buy this one box, and it does everything you need to do. It plays your games, it's your cable TV, it's...
I mean, they didn't really talk about games the first year.
Yeah, they didn't talk about games enough. They talked a lot about TV, and they talked a lot about what Kinect can do. But that was and it's a Blu-ray player. So that was the idea that they sort of pitched is throw away all your other living room boxes. You just need this one piece of hardware. They went all in on focusing on hardware. And it went really, really, really poorly. And, it wasn't all the fault of the One branding. A lot of it was stuff like, initially they were planning to make it so you, couldn't play used games without paying a fee and that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. But basically, after the botched Xbox reveal, there was this big corporate turnover, right? Where Don Matrick was head of Xbox. He left and went to go work at one of the mobile developers. I'm blanking at the moment.
Is it the Candy Crush one, I think? King?
I think it was the Farmville developer. Who do you remember who makes Farmville? I think it was, is it Zynga?
Oh, maybe.
But the point is, he left Xbox and Phil Spencer replaced him. And then also, the president and CEO of Microsoft stepped down, and he was replaced by Satya Nadella. So Satya Nadella was the head of their cloud technology division. So basically, we had this big corporate turnover, and now they've done a complete 180, not 360, note. They've done this complete 180 where when they launched Xbox One, it was like, hey, it's all about the hardware. And now they're going, nope, never mind. Hardware doesn't matter. Buy whatever hardware you want. It's all about the software because that's the moneymaker.
So does this mean that their next system, like, not only would it probably be their final system, but it'll probably go like the Sega Dreamcast?
So, I mean, they're still launching 2 new pieces of hardware next gen. We've heard one will heavily revolve around the streaming tech, and the other one will just be more like, a big, beefy sequel to the Xbox One. I don't know if they have any kind of deal with Sony. I kind of doubt it. But, they want you to be able to play your Xbox games on, if you buy their physical box, great. But if not, they want you to be able to buy their games on PC, tablet, phone, and apparently even Switch. So, they haven't gone completely third party, but they're recognizing that the software is just way more important than the box that you play it on.
They recognize the benefits of possibly just moving towards being third party.
Yeah.
If this is all happening like this year, and depending on the games that go up, I can't believe they're going to be the first ones to bring Nintendo 64 games before Nintendo to the Switch.
Yeah.
It is a fascinating move, yeah, because I feel like, I guess at this point, really the only reason to own a core Xbox, if all true, is if you're really dead set on like the 4K power of the One X and whatever comes next.
And it is beautiful.
I'm sure, yeah. But yeah, it is interesting from a consumer perspective. At least for me personally, what I've been thinking for the last year or so is there really aren't a lot of exclusives that interest me personally on the Xbox One. I already have Cuphead on Steam, and I believe you can get Ori there as well, which I do want to play. But I had been thinking for a while that, well, maybe I would just get a cheap or used, discounted, whatever, Xbox One S, so that I could have, like, maybe the 2 games that interested me, namely Halo Master Chief Collection and Rare Replay, and then I would also have, like, a 4K Blu-ray player, which the PS4 Pro cannot do.
Which is just obnoxious.
Right. But this, yeah, so now this throws a wrench in even that idea. Like, maybe I can just save even more money and still play that. And I mean, having Cuphead and Rare Replay on Switch would be so amazing.
And beyond that, this could potentially mean more third-party support for Switch. Like, Nintendo's already dabbling with this idea of, cloud processing in Japan. So if you're in Japan, you can play Resident Evil 7 and Assassin's Creed Odyssey on Switch, but you have to pay a cloud fee, and then, it works a lot like xCloud, where, the stuff that's too intensive for Switch to handle is done on a server elsewhere and then just kind of pinged back to the console, with as limited latency as possible. But Microsoft, they've invested, I think well over $1 billion into this tech over the past decade. And I'm still a little bit in the I'll believe it when I see it camp when it comes to, no latency for processing that has to, go over the internet or whatever. But, they're hyping this up really big, and if it works anywhere near as good as they say it does, they could potentially port any game they want to Switch and, just design it so that anything Switch can't handle, it doesn't have to. So this could mean more third-party support for Switch, outside of the Microsoft games.
Mm-hmm.
And for Microsoft, this could also be their possibly only chance of breaking into the Japanese market. Like, the weekly sales data gets put out every week, and you can go through and look and see pretty detailed numbers on how many Switches and PlayStations and such have been sold. Japan has way better data on that than, like, America or Europe. And, if you go through every week, it's like, 25 Xboxes were sold this week in Japan. Like, it's really, really pathetic. But, Switch is pretty popular in Japan. So if you could play Halo on Switch, that's potentially millions of more Halo sales for, people that weren't willing to go out and buy an Xbox but already have a Switch and like, hey, you know what? Why not? Why not give this Halo game a shot? Or even if they're not, willing to plop down $60 on games, they might be willing to buy Game Pass and go, hey, why not check out this sort of Netflix style thing? If I don't have to buy the Xbox to do it, sure, I can spare the, whatever it is, $15 a month or whatever.
I grew up with both families of systems, so it makes me really happy to see them come together like this. And it does paint an interesting roadmap going forward as to how things might turn out. Because if Microsoft does fully intend to go third party, and it'll just be down to Nintendo and Sony, wouldn't it?
Yeah, there's been talk about like Google or Apple or something releasing a dedicated home console.
Oh,
but,
God, that's right.
In terms of the major players in the market right now, it's just those three. But keep in mind, we do know they are launching hardware next gen.
Mm-hmm.
So, and they've said it'll probably take about another year and a half. So we're looking at like holiday 2020 for the next Xbox, and then assuming it has 5-year lifespan. So we're talking about like 7+ years from now that Xbox would hypothetically go third party. So it's it's still a ways away, but just the idea of them essentially giving up any concept of exclusives is a pretty big deal.
Or competition or console war, which really that hasn't really been Nintendo and Microsoft's name of their game for quite some time now. They're collaborating more and more in open and plain sight right before us. They were the first ones to break down the barriers of cross-platform multiplayer. We're starting to see. We've already gotten like games like with Minecraft on there, and then suddenly, even though they bought out the studio responsible, we're getting Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice, which they probably could have just shut it down, but they said no. You know what? Let's just bring it to Switch anyway. So I don't know. Like I think they've been deliberately hinting at this, and not to say that it's going to be a surefire deal that we're going to see Microsoft fully supporting the Switch, but if it sounds like a duck and it looks like a duck,
might be a mallard.
Yep.
It had slipped my mind until now that now when you play Minecraft on Switch, you use a basic Xbox account for crossplay purposes, and so this does feel in a lot of ways like a logical upgrade from that.
Yeah, for sure. And like I said, it fits with the philosophy that I think Satya Nadella has been pushing at the company since he was promoted to president. So, very much unconfirmed at this point, but the evidence is really starting to mount. And, guys, I think, we've talked a lot about this, but we've missed the big picture here. This makes it more likely that Banjo-Kazooie comes to Smash, right?
Banjo-Kazooie, Banjo-Kazooie. I never played the games, but I'd be happy to play them in Smash Bros. Banjo-Kazooie.
You're very musical today, Jeff.
I don't know. I've kind of just woken up with a spring in my step, and it hasn't really gone away.
So yeah, overall, I'd say, I hope this happens. I don't know how all-encompassing it'll be, but having more games on Switch is a good thing. Having more, options for ways to play games, like a Netflix-style app, that's a good thing to me. Potentially having games that couldn't run on Switch before now running, that's a good thing. Big names like Halo coming to Switch, that's a good thing. So it's strange to think about, and I've seen a lot of resistance online, people saying, like, no, I don't want Xbox on my Switch, but I don't really get that mindset to me. It's like, if you don't want the content, don't play it, but it sounds to me like this is going to greatly enhance the offerings that Switch has if it happens. So I see nothing but positives from this.
Yeah, just so long as I can play all of the games that I own digitally on Xbox through the Switch, I'll be a happy camper. I mean, if anything, it'll probably be the closest thing I'll get to, say, I don't know, Sonic Unleashed and Sonic Generations HD on a Nintendo platform, seeing as those have never been ported. And just to fling more mud at EA because it's fun. I mean, I am trying to get back into the Dragon Age games, and this will probably be the only way I'll get to play them on a Nintendo system, because I don't see BioWare lasting all that much longer. But that's a topic for another podcast.
Yeah, no kidding.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And as long as we are slinging mud around, I was just reminded of a previous take back when you were talking about Assassin's Creed Origins getting or Odyssey, not Origins, sorry, getting the streaming set up on Switch. So essentially, and since those cost a subscription fee or whatever, they were literally charging you a paywall so they could tempt you with more microtransactions.
Absolutely.
That is true.
And honestly, the paywall was pretty bad too. It costs more to rent it for a year than it costs to actually buy the game. So hopefully things are a lot more reasonably priced if xCloud comes to Switch. And
hey, Warner Brothers, I know you're not listening to this, but even if you were, I bought Shadow of War only after the microtransactions were pulled. You burnt. I mean, you still got my money, but still, you burnt.
All right, well, I think that about wraps it up. So thanks, everybody, for listening, and thank you guys for joining me.
A lot of fun tonight.
Always happy to be here.
All right. So, we're going to continue putting out episodes every, we've been aiming for every 2 weeks, but if there's big breaking news like this time, then, we'll speed up the pipeline a little bit. And, we have less of a schedule for this, but we've also got our Gamnesia After Dark podcast, if you want a little extra content outside of Nintendo, where we just kind of, talk about whatever, Sony, Microsoft, movies, anime, what's going on in our personal lives. It's all good. Until then, you can follow me on Twitter at Erimgard, ERIMGARD. Will?
I am at AWK043, AWK043. I like video games.
And Jeff?
At Visor Jeff Hogg, VIZARDJEFFHOG. Hey, that actually rhymed.
All right, guys. Till next time. Thanks for joining me. Have a good night.
So long, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.